So hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been a while since I actually did a video of just myself talking to the camera, and I kind of want to get back on track with some of these videos on the cognitive functions and how we can learn from the functions that we do not have, which is really important because we actually have all 8 cognitive functions. It just depends on which ones that we value and are more in tune with, but we can still learn things from the other functions that we don't consciously value or use, because a lot of times those are also really useful for our own growth and for experiencing the world in a more holistic and balanced way. And so, before I get started, here's a reminder that you can feel free to support me on Patreon, and also can check out the personality themed merchandise, and they are all in the description box below. And also feel free to like and subscribe to this channel. So yeah, today it's going to be about introverted feeling and how INFJs can actually learn from this function. So obviously, there are some stereotypes about introverted feeling. Introverted feeling is sometimes seen as this function that causes a lot of brooding, a lot of sadness, because types that lead with introverted feeling, especially the INFPs, they tend to have this crying stereotype around them. And while that is one aspect of introverted feeling that can cause people to be a little too emotionally reactive to things, because introverted feeling tends to be more personally motivated, and so they tend to see everything as relating to them. But there are actually positive aspects to introverted feeling as well that we can learn from in order to really allow us to become, I think, a more functional person, in my opinion, because we can use FI. Actually, INFJs, we are able to tap into our introverted feeling, but we just have to learn to do it the right way, so it's not focusing on the brooding part of it, and rather it's about things that introverted feeling can offer that we can learn from, and we can actually use it to help us achieve our goals in life, and also help us to relate to people in a better way. So one thing I think that we can all learn from introverted feelers, especially those that are, using it as dominant or the auxiliary function, is that introverted feelers, they are more in tune with their feelings as opposed to the extroverted feelers. So for INFJs, we can have a vision of what we want. We can have introverted intuition to help us to understand what we want. We are a little bit more focused on what other people would think. And even though we try not to let it affect us too much, it still affects us. So we have extroverted feeling, and we are concerned with what society might think, and even though we may not want them to affect us, it still is kind of part of how we react. So what I tend to notice is that when introverted feeling people want to go for something, they don't really have the concern of maybe it's not exactly what something that society would see as functional, or what society see as a respectable thing. They just go for it anyway. So one example that I can give is that I have a few INFP friends, and one of them is really into theater, which is typical of NFPs, I guess. A lot of NFPs tend to be into theater. Not saying every one of them, but I noticed that pattern. And she just went for it. She didn't really care about how the people around her would think, and she didn't really care about what her parents would think. She just went for what she felt was something that she cared about, and so she didn't think about the external factors, like, oh, how do I ensure that I don't burden the people around me with the financial difficulties. Of course, she found her way to like finance herself, but that wasn't like the primary consideration. So she just went for theater because that's what she loves. And another friend of mine, she's an INFP, and she actually studied creative writing in college, which I thought was a very daring move because, for me, I would still consider like, oh, creative writing as a major. How is that going to get me to, a financially stable situation? And creative writing is also something that is quite risky. Society may not see that as a viable means of support, and so and also like people may worry for me because they are like, creative writing, and we are paying for you to study something that is not exactly going to provide you with the stability that you need. And so I do have all these considerations, but my INFP friend actually just went for it. She just went ahead and studied creative writing, and I think she wants to be a creative writing teacher, or something related to that, a language teacher. And she just immediately, she didn't take any detour, she just went for it. And I think there is some kind of courage in that. And I'm not saying, you should throw finance out of the window and not think about how you're gonna live and all that, because obviously we still have to consider those things. And I'm also not saying you shouldn't care about what other people may advise when it comes to things that make sense, but sometimes we really do have to go with our passion and our feelings a little more courageously, and we don't have to take so many detours. Like for example, if you like writing, just take a writing class. Like you don't have to think about the consequences, think about how people would see that. And if you like maybe acting, you should just go for it. You shouldn't have to consider, people don't really see me as someone who acts because I am usually a shy person. Like you don't have to think about that, right? You just go for it. You just go for it because it is something that you like. What people think, how people see you doesn't really factor into the fact that you yourself really like it and want to explore it. I think INFJs can do that too, right? We can also go for what we want. We can also know what is important to us, but sometimes it takes us a little while longer to really go for it. So we may procrastinate a little bit, worry about the consequences. I mean, and I as well, and I is future oriented. So sometimes we worry about the consequences. We, worry about people's perceptions of us a little bit, and then we take the leap, right? But sometimes you just have to go with your feelings. I mean, it really is that simple. And sometimes, going with your feelings can actually save you a lot of time. So for example, me starting this channel, I took quite a few years really to even begin, because I was procrastinating and not going according to simply what I feel I should do and what I feel is important to me. So that really took me a lot of time to finally do it and finally go with the flow, And so I think this tapping into how we really feel, what our interests are, what our purpose is, and just not being affected by our surroundings so much. And yeah, that can really help us to save time. Also, another thing that we can learn from introverted feelers is that we have to know how we feel about the situation, and we have to learn to validate how we feel about the situation. And the thing is, I realized that through my own experience that I'm not very good at that, because as someone who is an extroverted feeler, I'm really good at validating other people's feelings, right? Like if someone else come to me with a problem, like maybe they have been dealing with a really difficult relationship situation, or they're dealing with a difficult situation at work, I am really good at validating how they feel. I'll be like, that is totally understandable that you feel that way, because that is a very challenging situation to be in. But when it comes to how I feel, I realize that sometimes I don't, in fact, validate my feelings, and I tend to make it seem like I don't have the rights to feel a certain way. Obviously, that is also tied to, maybe people around you tend to have this like habit of not validating their own feelings, and so it kind of influence you. And I realized that, people with introverted feeling, when it's weak, TJ types sometimes are not good at validating their own feelings either, because introverted feeling is not very developed in their function stack. But when we do get good at using FI in a healthy way, or learning from people who can use it in a healthy way, we learn to see validity in our feelings. Like, not saying that, oh, we should act like this forever because that's how we feel, but it's more like understanding ourselves, and knowing that we do have a right to feel the way that we do. So, for example, if you find that you're really angry at a person, you don't push that away and say, oh, it's just a petty matter, you are just being too dramatic. No, you actually validate your own feelings by saying, yeah, that was a really difficult situation to be in, and of course you are angry, right? Like, that's a normal reaction to something that happened, like, in such a way. And so in that way, you are at least able to acknowledge that that is what you're feeling. Like, you're not pushing it away, you're not trying to explain it away, you're not trying to cover it up with something else that is not really how you feel. And I think that can actually do a lot for us. If you know about psychology, actually not validating your own feelings can lead to emotional neglect, and it can lead to you basically bottling up a lot of toxic emotions, and it's really unhealthy when you don't validate your own feelings. And you always have to remember that the first step to resolving something is to acknowledge that it's there. So I think a lot of INFJs do not do that with ourselves. Like, we feel like, oh, I should be, polite, or I should always be acting a certain way. Like, I'm not reacting in an ideal way. Like, I'm not being an ideal version of how I should act. Like, it's wrong for me to feel this way because I should be feeling another way instead. But you have to know that you also have a right to feel the spectrum of feelings. And as people, like, we will feel certain things that we don't see as ideal. So we can feel envious, we can feel angry, we can feel really hurt by things that may not seem like a big deal to other people. Yeah, we have our own emotional reactions, and that goes with everyone, right? Like, we all react emotionally to situations in our own way. So really the first step is to acknowledge that that is how we feel, and that it is okay to have that reaction. In the future, maybe we want to react differently, or we may want to think about it differently. But right now, that's how we feel. Like, we can't deny our rights to feel that way. And that in itself is actually really freeing, because we don't have to live to a certain really high standard of, oh, I shouldn't feel angry about this, or I shouldn't feel sad about this. Like, that is how you are feeling right now. So you admit to it, you acknowledge that. And that's something that introverted feeling people are really good at, and that we can learn from. And the third point is, if you know introverted feeling people, they tend to have a very strong set of morals and core beliefs that they stick by no matter what. And of course, sometimes it can have a flip side of being too stubborn. Sometimes, they are too uncompromising, and it makes it really difficult for people to live harmoniously, because they don't want to give out any parts of their core beliefs, and they kind of see people with different set of beliefs as the enemy. I mean, that's a more extreme use of FI, but we also have to understand that this is something that we can learn from as INFJs, because we are really good at understanding the different perspectives, right? We are very good at understanding, okay, this is your set of beliefs, this is my set of beliefs, and we can work around it, we can find the middle ground, we can do this and that. But sometimes it comes to the point where we shouldn't compromise. And we should actually, in fact, we should stand up for our values. We should stand up for our ethics and our core beliefs, right? It doesn't mean that, okay, just because you're an FI user, I have to always give in to you. I have to always compromise. I have to respect your beliefs, but you don't have to respect mine. I think at a certain point, you have to understand that things have to go both ways. And my ethics and my values, like what I see as important, also matter. So it's not just me trying to live to your standards of what is right. It's also you having to live to my standards of what is right. And we have to know that our own values matter at the end of the day, because a lot of times I realize with people is that I can, tolerate, I can make room for them, saying all sorts of things that are not congruent with my values, and I can accept that because I understand that as a society, you have to be able to accept that not everyone has the exact same core beliefs and morals as you, because we all have our own different sets of, values, and that can even change from time to time. But what I notice is that sometimes when I voice out what is important to me, the same people don't show respect to what I value. Like they may say something that is very dismissive, or even make it sound like I'm in the wrong for just believing the things that I believe, and for voicing out what I see as ethical and important and part of my core beliefs. And so at that point, don't compromise. Don't let people dictate how you should see a situation, how you should feel about a situation. Like, there is a point where you have to learn to stick by your own values and to stick by what is important to you. And that is standing up for yourself in a way. That is being authentic to yourself. And if people cannot take what is true to you, then, they're going to make room for people who can. And you cannot, always let people take the center stage. You cannot always let people say what they want, and you just, pretend like you agree, or you just let their values take center stage without really getting them to listen to yours. We have to stand up for what we believe in too, and that is really important. And I think that we can learn from FI users when it comes to conversations as well. When it comes to self-expression, that is really important to us. We have to make room for our own self-expression as well. It's not just about catering to other people's self-expression, right? It's also about being able for us to hold a space for ourselves, and to say that, if you are not able to respect my self-expression, then you can leave. I hope that you learned something through this video, and remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. I'll see you the next time. Bye.